Hi, my name's Lauren, and I'll be presenting my findings from my faith-informed clinical identity practice from CLS 613 Empathy Training. In this presentation, I will be covering empathy in the New Testament as well as examples of that empathy, neuroscience and empathy, and lastly, faith's impact on empathy in my own life. When looking at empathy in the New Testament, we can walk away with 4 lessons that correlate to our own empathy development. The first lesson is empathizing with those who hurt us. The second, grace and mercy as core empathy skills. Third, humility's role in empathy. And lastly, boundaries and empathy in our own lives. Lesson 1, empathizing with those who hurt us. Here are 2 passages that reflect Christ's desire for his followers. The first one is Matthew 5, 38 through 42. You have heard that it is said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the ones who want to borrow from you. The second passage is Matthew 7, 1 through 6. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may be trampled them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. In both of these passages, Jesus is encouraging a posture of heart. In the first one, Matthew 5, 38 through 42, Jesus is urging his followers to flee revenge. In Matthew 7, 1 through 6, he's encouraging people to not tear others down in an effort to lift yourself up. To applicably achieve this, we must first implore empathy onto others. In Born for Love, empathy development is heavily explored. Our own empathy development is a result of the effectiveness of our first key relationship that shapes the neural system of the stress response to allow self-regulation. Basically, the more positive the first key relationship is, the more our brain is able to develop empathy in response to it. Lesson 2, grace and mercy as core empathy skills. We all know about Luke 10, 25 through 37, the parable of the Good Samaritan. And in this parable, the Good Samaritan empathizes with a man's pain and shows mercy on him in response. Grace and mercy are byproducts of empathy. In order to practice Christ-like grace and mercy, we first must empathize. Brené Brown defines empathy as feeling with people. When we empathize with people, truly feel what they feel, we are able to extend grace and mercy. When empathizing, our primary feelings are more related to others and their feelings to other person's situation than your own. The third lesson is humility's role in empathy. In Philippians 2, 3 through 11, imitating Christ's humility, it is said, in humility, value others above yourself, in verse 3. A lack of humility hinders our ability to implore grace and mercy. Humility is vital to empathizing with those who we struggle to do so with. In my own life, I struggle sometimes to empathize with those who express little to no empathy. In my own experience, I tend to value myself over others, failing to consider others above myself. Without my own humility, I'm never able to extend grace and mercy, and it ultimately hinders my ability to empathize with them as a result of. Lesson 4, boundaries and empathy. In Matthew 12, 9 through 14, Jesus heals a man's hand on the Sabbath. Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, "It is lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" He said to them, "If any of you have a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other one. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Matthew 12:9-14. Jesus felt with a man and broke religious and cultural boundaries to act upon it. He implored true empathy by understanding his pain and then acting out on that empathy to break the boundaries that had been set in their culture. To do the work of Christ is to do good, even on the Sabbath. In Zondervan's commentary, they say this wasn't a different interpretation of the law, but a fundamentally different approach to that law and to life itself. Other examples of empathy explored in the Bible is John 11:17-35. I didn't copy it here because it's so long, but it's when Lazarus dies and Jesus feels with the people he is with. The famous verse, John 11:35, Jesus wept. What seems like a cliche verse reveals to us Jesus' true empathy for others. Mirroring or resonance mechanism is also at play both when one experiences sensory and affective feelings in the self and when one perceives them in others. In this instant, Jesus is not only feeling his own feelings towards Lazarus' death, but he's feeling the feelings of others around him. Jesus is experiencing these sensory and affective feelings in himself and others. Another example of empathy in the Bible is in Hebrews 4:14-16. Jesus became man to empathize with us. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we were, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Jesus came to earth with the intention of empathizing with us. He did so by becoming man. It's clear that in the verse where it says he's not a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way. So our God, who is fully man, was tempted just like us and therefore can empathize with our weaknesses and with our struggles. The next portion I'll be covering is neuroscience's role in empathy. The main implication I wanted to cover was emotional contagion. The primitive emotional contagion is a basic building block of human interaction. It assists in mind reading and allows people to understand and to share feelings of others. We do this in everyday life where we connect with people and share feelings with others. Emotional contagion allows us to feel with the people that we're most connected with. Where this can become an implication is when imploring empathy becomes more like catching the feelings of others. We are vulnerable to catching these feelings and making them our own, basically. This places the focus on oneself rather than the other person, and it can become a very selfish way of empathizing with others when we place our focus on ourselves rather than the feelings of others and what they're going through. Lastly, I wanted to discuss faith's impact on my own empathy. A verse that means a lot to me and has really shaped my view on empathy is Romans 5:8. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. This is from the NIV version. When we recognize our own depravity, it allows us to recognize each other's. We are all depraved humans in need of the gospel, and the gospel of grace is universally applicable and extended to us at our worst. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us is such a powerful statement. Christ didn't die for us when we had already worked through our mess and become righteous children, but he died when we were still sinners. In conclusion, we are all depraved humans in need of a Savior, and with humility we can extend grace and mercy to others while empathizing with them. I hope to continue to learn ways I can employ these skills in my own life and future clinical career. Here are my references that I used for this presentation.